What up? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And look at you. You done stumbled upon little OTB Saints, where we bring you all the latest black and gold coverage.
Who are the Saints going to draft? Who's going to be their quarterback? What does the salary cap look like? All that information and more.
Hope you enjoy it. Like, subscribe.
Not a lot of good news coming out of Saints camp with Ryan Ramczyk, which we kind of figured was going to be the case, but it is official now. The Saints have placed tackle, their all-pro tackle, Ryan Ramczyk, on the reserve physically unable to perform list. What that move means, he'll miss the entire season. I was looking to see why, because they put him on now. I thought it was like 4 to 8 games, but if you do it before a certain date, that means he's a vested veteran. He was placed on the reserve pup list for the final roster cuts, and that's going to make him going for the entire season. So there's no chance, and I don't know if there's any chance for him to play again.
Kind of seems to be the consensus of everyone saying that, because he's battled with this for a couple years now. This is not something new. He's been in and out of the lineup. He's tried to push through it. He just cannot push through it anymore. The bigger issue for me is you've moved Trevor Penning to a few spots now and he's struggled. Right tackle's kind of last resort. Can we get something out of this first-round pick? And we have a huge hole to fill there. If Trevor Penning doesn't work out, I mean, your backup offensive lineman right now, you signed Lucas Patrick, who is a solid veteran, more of a center guard than he is a tackle. You have Landon Young, who can play tackle. I like him better at guard. A lot of your depth pieces are better inside than they are outside. I mean, you signed Udo in free agency, solid depth piece. So, I don't know if Saints fans truly realize how much we are hitching the wagon to Trevor Penning. This has to work at right tackle. Because if it doesn't, you could move Taliese Fuaga over. He's played left tackle and right tackle. But now you're in the same position just on the left side. It's more than just, oh, well, you're losing a great player. You have no depth at tackle now either.
I mean, if I'm looking at this offensive line, I feel pretty good about Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz. After that, I think it's a lot of unknowns. Fuaga, obviously a first-round draft pick out of Oregon State. He's going to be either on the right or left side. He's going to start, but we have no idea, Taylor, how good is he going to be? How is he going to transition from the college game to the pro game? He's going to be going against, and he was going against good players at Oregon State, but he's going to be going against grown men who make a lot of money to rush the passer.
I love Taliese Fuaga. He was my favorite offensive lineman in this last class. The good thing about him is if he doesn't work out at tackle, you can kick him down to guard. But again, who do you put at that tackle spot? Think about how sad what you just said was, because I agree. You're confident in Eric McCoy. The next confidence level is Cesar Ruiz, and he hasn't exactly lit the world on fire. Right. But outside of him, I mean, right now your starter at left guard is Nick Saldiveri. He's a solid player. They have high expectations for him. Never been a consistent everyday starter in the NFL. You got Trevor Penning. You tried him at left tackle. You tried him at guard. Shaky at best. At both those spots, you're trying to see if the right side will work out. And then you got a rookie left tackle who you just mentioned is going to be thrown in the fire against some of the best pass rushers in the league from day one. It's just, if you had one more veteran on this offensive line like a Ramczyk, you would feel so much better about it. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be the case.
I really thought the Saints would go offensive line with their first 2 picks. Obviously, it didn't happen. I do think they had a pretty good draft if you look at it overall. We're going to talk the South Division in the next segment, but the Saints also placed tight end Jawan Johnson, defensive end Tano Pasagon, and linebacker Nefi Sewell, and defensive end Chase Young on the active PUP list, so they can return at any time during the preseason. Chase Young, to me, he's got to be right for the Saints this year. He's got to be right.
He'll be fine. I mean, this stems from, the day after you sign him, it comes out that he had to have neck surgery. I think he's going to be ready for the start of the season. I think he's going to be kind of that swing end, because your 2 starters, I believe, are set in stone, whether it's Carl Granderson on one side and Cam Jordan on the other, but Jordan's getting a little bit up there in age. You don't have Tano Passanio anymore. He's hurt. No word yet on when he's going to come back. Chase Young has to be that swing defensive end that can go in there and rush the passer from either side of the defensive line. Because, Troy, we were talking about it before the show. The interior of this defensive line is not great. I mean, Brian Bresee did some solid things. He showed flashes as a rookie. Nathan Shepard, decent player. Kalen Saunders had a pretty good year. They're not exactly world beaters there on the inside. You got to be able to get after the passer on the edge. Chase Young's going to be huge in that spot.
I'm concerned about Juwan Johnson not being available. I know they feel like he can come back this season, but he was a weapon for him last year. You take that weapon away, you got an angry Alvin Kamara right now who's disgruntled. I don't know, man. It just seems like there's not a lot of positives when you're talking about this football team. And again, I'm certainly not a huge fan of the head coach. He's shown that he's not a top-notch coach. I think he's a very good coordinator, but he's shown that he's not a top-notch coach when it comes to the NFL. So, and boy, he is sticking with that quarterback. He is sticking with Derek Carr, and I don't know, man. There's a lot of question marks with this team. Trying to figure out how this team can make the playoffs, to me, is a head scratcher.
Yeah, and we'll get into it next segment about the NFC South, but the NFC South didn't exactly get weaker this offseason, and I can't really find a spot where the Saints got significantly better in any spot. I mean, I think they had a pretty good draft. You draft Fuaga in the first round, who I love. You get Kool-Aid McKinstry out of Alabama in the second round, but, I mean, you didn't really add a ton of weapons on the outside, and look, we'll dive into it. Brandon Aiyuk wants to be traded from the 49ers. That's obviously a spot where the Saints need help. The only issue is you don't really have a ton of pieces to trade that the 49ers would be interested in right now. I mean, you go look at the 49ers roster. Really, another safety next to Hufanga is the one spot. Safety might be your weakest spot on defense. So while there's guys out there that fit a need on offense, I don't know if you have the resources to acquire these pieces.
You don't.
And then you've pushed the salary cap so far down the road. Brandon Aiyuk, word is he's wanting $30 million a year. You don't have the money to pay a guy like that. So you got Olave, you got Rashid Shaheed. Outside of him, is A.T. Perry going to take another step? Is it Cedric Wilson? I mean, I kind of think if the season started today, Cedric Wilson would be your number 3. Bub Means, you drafted in the 6th round. He's good. He had a solid college career. Is he even going to make this team, though, is the thing. Equanimous St. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown's brother's on the roster as well, but his career is 260 yards receiving is his best year in the NFL. I mean, he's a special teams guy as well. The weapons just aren't there, and there's not really a clear path to acquire any.
I would love a Brandon Aiyuk from the 49ers to come on the Saints team. But to get him, you're probably going to have to give I would say if I'm the 49ers, I want Chris Olave. Let's do it.
Or Marshawn Lattimore.
I don't know if that's enough. Marshawn Lattimore.
Oh, it would be Lattimore and a pick, at least one, maybe 2.
Okay. I mean, 1 for 1, I think Aiyuk is a better, piece, talent. And I think Lattimore's a good player, but Brandon Aiyuk is a very good player. And I think if I'm the 49ers, send Olave my way.
Yeah, and if you do that, you're kind of right back in the same spot you're at, right? Because, I mean, a huge question mark on this team, not because I don't think he's a good player, is Rashid Shaheed, just because can he be that every down outside receiver? Can he be your number 2? We saw flashes of him last year. Can he do that every single game? You're kind of in the same spot if you trade away Olave.
Before we wrap this segment up on the Saints linebacker, obviously you got Davis, you got Pete Werner. You feel pretty good about those guys. They picked up the linebacker from Texas. His name escapes me right now. It's going to come to me. He's a rookie. I like him, but which concerns me there is the age of those guys. And I know Pete Werner's a little younger, but every time we question Davis, he comes back and has a fantastic year.
He was listed at 53 on the NFL Top 100 this year still. I mean, going into his mid-30s. Him and Pete Werner, I think, is a great 1 and 2 at linebacker. The problem is the depth behind them. The depth that you had in the years past is just not there. The guy you're referring to is Jalen Ford out of Texas. He's a solid player. Again, he's a rookie. We don't know what he could do yet. I think their front two with Werner and Davis is good, but Davis is getting a little bit older. Can Pete Werner stay healthy? I think it's the depth behind them that's really concerning.
I think the secondary is in pretty good shape. We talked about safety being, Honey Badger. Tyrann Mathieu is a great player, but he is of age. I mean, he's aging a bit, but I was just looking up some stuff on the Saints. Demario Davis returns to ESPN's top 10 linebacker rankings yet again. This guy's amazing, and he's such a faith-filled guy, a family guy. I'm looking at the Saints depth chart, and before I go to the defense real quick, before we get out of here, what do you think about Spencer Rattler? Does he make this team?
Yeah, I think they carry 3 quarterbacks. I think the battle for the number 2 spot between him and Jake Haener is that close. And I mean, it was such a luxury to have Taysom listed as a quarterback for so long because it's like you could carry that third quarterback, but he also played other spots. I do think that they open up another spot. I think they cut 2, maybe even 3 of these receivers to keep that third quarterback, but they like both guys.
They did pick a guy. We didn't talk about Willie Gay. They picked him up. I mean, it's not a huge piece, but he comes from a pedigree in Kansas City, obviously. But if you look at Adebo, Jordan Howden, Matthew, Marshawn Lattimore, Ugo Amadi, Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think that, Nickelback Alante Taylor, Shamar John Charles, I think that's a pretty good secondary.
I think your corners in particular are great. I mean, you mentioned it. McKinstry, Alante Taylor, Paulson Adebo, Marshawn Lattimore. Safety's where it gets a little bit more iffy for me because you mentioned, Tyrann Mathieu is probably your best player in that spot. At this point in his career, he's probably just nothing more than a box safety. I mean, he's a little bit older. He's not going to be covering anybody way downfield. Jordan Howden was a 5th-round pick from a year ago. He was really good. I think he surprised some people. You got him and Jonathan Abram. Those are guys that are going to be battling for kind of that deep safety spot. Apparently they like him, though, because they've had an opportunity to bring in a lot of different safeties and have not done that yet. I do think outside of those guys, though, you lack depth at safety. You may have to cross-train one of these corner nickels.
I think the only reason the Saints don't finish last in the division is because the Carolina Panthers are there.
Wow, just amazing black and gold takes right there, Jake.
I don't think I've ever heard any takes that are better than the 2 guys that just gave you that take.
And you can keep getting them by going ahead and liking, subscribing, ringing the bell to get notifications when we post. Have a great day. We'll see you on the next OTB Saints.